Right, so Gordon and Pam, I got the go ahead to start because we got plenty of responses saying everybody can hear us, which is number one. That's what we want. So I'll go ahead and just kind of get it rolling. And so the first thing I want to say is that we're really glad that you're here today. My name is John McGill, like I said earlier, and I'm coming to you from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm here today because I'm the Lottie representative for this Llama Plus Lottie webinar that's being presented. And so that's kind of my role, and I'll be kind of in the background today, really. But Lottie's really excited to be offering this webinar with Llama. It's something that Pam and Gordon and I have been working on for the last several months, and it's finally coming to fruition. So really glad about that, and glad to be able to offer this. Um, and so I don't have much to say. I want to keep my part of this short. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to bring in Pam Strader. And Pam oversees husbandry and operations at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. And I don't know if I've met Pam other than just through this contact and this process. So I don't know a lot about Pam. So but it's been good working with her. And so with that, I'll turn it to Pam. And Pam, you've got the floor now, so you can take it and do your part.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank everyone, and I'm glad everybody's able to join us at this webinar. This is a collaboration that is born out of Llama's strategic long-range plans to enhance the Llama membership by providing leadership management training through webinars and minimizing some of the travel-related costs. It's our hope that today you will complete the short survey at the end of the webinar, as your feedback will help us determine the path forward for future webinars. I will say that continued education credits will be sent out to the participants participating in today's session. This presentation will also be made available for review at a later date. That said, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Gordon Yee. Gordon Yee worked for over 15 years as a laboratory animal technician at several research facilities in the greater Montreal area, and has been working for the past 19 as the Director of Marketing for ANCare. He is an outspoken advocate on the benefits and necessity of lab animal research, and a real fan of building management, communication, and leadership skills. A 2012 graduate of ILAM and currently serving on the ILAM committee, Gordon is also a past president of the Canadian Association for Laboratory Animal Sciences. Gordon has spoken at both ALAS and KLAS conferences, as well as Llama, ILAM, and today through this webinar, Latte. Gordon, thank you so much for sharing some of your leadership wisdom with us.
Oh, thank you very much, Pam, and thank you, John. I can't say how honored I am that two organizations like Llama and Latte even considered me to speak about this interesting yet so important topic. You know, leadership is one of those things that's always worth discussing, and certainly always worth developing. So to start today, I just want to set how we're going to dream. We want to dream big, or rather, I want to dream big with something in particular. We want to set some goals, and we want to decide a plan of action. Where I'm going to be dreaming big is that I know a lot of people who are in on this webinar. A lot of us are Facebook friends. And if I see that absolutely none of them has gone ahead and posted on Facebook during my presentation, then that means that I was captivating enough to keep them entertained and to keep them informed and to keep them involved with the webinar as it goes on. For the goals for the audience, though, well, I'm hoping that we'll take a general overview of what modern leadership is. Maybe in that you will see some things that you do now, and hopefully some areas where maybe you can improve. And we will also discuss what you can do to facilitate some change in your current leadership styles. For the Take Action tab, I just want to remind you that this webinar is not going to change everything for you. At best, I'm just hoping to point you in a direction where you can learn more and develop more. But honestly, that will be on your end to discover after the presentation. This is really just a brief journey of discovery. So let's start off simply then, just by asking, what is a leader? Now, certainly leadership is one of those things that can be hard to pin down, but people do have a tendency to say that I know it when I see it. But still, can we try and define it? Well, personally, I love quotes. So I feel that quotes can often be little snippets of brilliance that can take a complex concept and break it down into memorable little bits. So let's take a look at some quotes about leadership. Andrew Glasgow is probably the most quoted person that you've never heard of. He was a real behind-the-scenes player in the business world, and he was actually so far behind the scenes that I couldn't even find a decent picture of him. But the quote that I have from him really helps to illustrate that mindset. A leader is willing to take a little more than his share of the blame and a little less than his share of the credit. I really love that personally as a leadership quote that embodies so much of what any leader should be trying to do. Certainly Eisenhower is someone that doesn't need much of an introduction overall for who he was or what he did, but what about this great leadership quote from him? Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. What he's really talking about here is the difference between motivating and inspiring. Motivating is getting someone to do something that they don't want to do. Inspiring is getting them to want to do it. Eisenhower believed that leaders should inspire. And James C. Humes was a speechwriter to 5 presidents, and he lends a very important part as to what a leader should be. You see, because he was, as a speechwriter, a communicator. It was his job, and he realized that the art of communication is the language of leadership. So if we're going to take those quotes and put it all together to try to build some picture of what leadership is, well, what would we say? Well, certainly we would realize that a leader exhibits the behaviors that they want in their team. A leader will accept responsibility and share credit. A leader will inspire. He's going to be people-focused and results-oriented. And for leaders, communication is key. By the way, if any of you happen to have any other types of leadership quotes or anything like that, feel free to go ahead and toss them up in the chat section or anything like that. I love quotes. I really can't get enough of them. So we know now what is needed, but what ultimately does it take to be a leader? What boxes need to be checked on a checklist to say that this person can be a leader? Well, for that, I want to go over to this fellow. His name is Derek Sivers. He did a TED Talk back in 2013 called How to Start a Movement, and it's a great TED Talk on leadership. In this, he talks about shirtless dancing guy who was at the Sasquatch Music Festival in 2009, and he was doing something special. He was really getting into the groove of the music, and this way that he was dancing was so unique and so special that people were captivated by it. If you look online, you will see several videos of him up there dancing from all kinds of different angles. What was really fascinating, though, is that someone realized it was so special that they didn't just want to watch, they wanted to participate. This fellow went up and he joined in and wanted to dance in the same way that shirtless dancing guy was. So the leader immediately embraced this first follower as an equal. What happened then was that the follower, well, he started calling up his friends, and they started joining in. Other people realized that it was okay for them to follow too. They didn't need to worry about being ridiculed, even if they were judging the shirtless dancing guy in the first place. They wanted to be part of this something special. And then it quickly rolled over into a movement. It wasn't about the one dancing guy or the small group of people doing something special. It was that everyone wanted to be doing that special thing. But the overall lesson was that leadership itself is actually over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless dancing guy, and he will get all the credit, but the real power came from the first follower. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. So that first nut is tremendously important. And as a matter of fact, these first nuts even have a special type of name. So a little shout out to my fellow Game of Thrones fans out there who would recognize Bronn as the first true follower of Tyrion Lannister. Bronn was a champion. A leader needs their champions. A champion is a leader themselves, but they're willing to let others lead ahead of them. They're willing to act as advocates for those in the group, and they give legitimacy to the leaders. Every leader needs their champions. So then really, what does it take? What are the boxes that need to be checked off if someone wants to be a leader? In order for someone to be a leader? Well, it's really simple. It takes someone who is willing to do something crazy and lead, and it takes someone who is willing to do something crazy and follow. That's it. You can't have a leader unless someone is willing to put themselves out there and accept the responsibility of being a leader. And you can't have a leader unless someone has the courage to follow. So then, who can be a leader? I mean, is there such a thing as a natural born leader? Well, yes, there is. And a natural born leader, they usually tend to be more of an extrovert. They usually exhibit confidence and have a high level of emotional intelligence. That means that they're good at empathizing with other people, and they may actually tend to be problem solvers, which maybe is part of the reason that they tend to move forward in leadership roles. Generally speaking, they're often open-minded, and again, they are hardworking. And more often than not, they're fairly observant as well. So if you see any of those traits in yourself, it's possible that you come about these naturally. But even still, it needs to be reinforced that leadership is a skill. And while maybe you can't learn to be an extrovert, you can fake confidence until you have it. You can develop emotional intelligence, and you can try to develop an open mind. And most of all, if you're even willing to try to do these things, there's no doubt that you're already hardworking. So leadership can be taught, and anyone who wants to be a leader can learn and develop these skills. Keep in mind, though, that leadership can only be taught to the people that are willing to learn. Harold Janine said that leadership cannot really be taught, it can only be learned. And that's an interesting aspect, that's an interesting concept. It really exemplifies the fact that people have to be open to the idea of embracing what a leader needs to be. So whether you come by these traits naturally or build them through hard work, there are additional skills that not only can be developed, but that should be continuously developed by anyone in any type of leadership position. These would include things like strategic thinking, communication skills, and inclusiveness. Each and every one of these should be continually developed, and look for as many opportunities that you can, to try to accomplish this. Chances are that's even why a lot of you are here today, is exactly for that type of reason. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need to be some type of superhero to be this type of leader. You don't. You just need to be consistent. Peter Drucker said that no institution can possibly survive if it needs geniuses or supermen to manage it. It must be organized in such a way as to be able to get along under a leadership composed of average human beings. So, as a bunch of average human beings, let's take a look at some average human leadership styles. Now, I'm sure that most of you have seen this type of image before, where on the top, sitting in their chair up in the office, is the boss. The boss drives the employees forward as they obey every command, and the boss is the only one with a clear vision. Below, we have a leader. The leader isn't sequestered away, but rather down in the trenches with the workers, showing them the way on how to get things done. Well, let's go back up to the boss here for a second. Is this a real leadership style? Is this legitimate? I know some of you right now are saying, no, it's not. Well, yes, it is. It's called being an authoritative leader. And in this type of leader situation, the leader unilaterally exercises all decision-making authority. They determine policies and procedures, they assign work tasks, and they maintain control through rewards and punishments. It's also known as an autocratic, coercive, or a dictatorship leadership environment. And are there times to use this? Well, believe it or not, yes. When the vision of the organization is unclear or adrift, when control is vital and there's little margin for error. Here we're really talking about in high stress emergencies. There are times to be an authoritative leader. But consider this. What is the lifespan of a typical emergency? They're short-lived. When you use this type of leadership environment continuously, staff feels angry and frustrated. Turnover increases, and long-term employees will feel demoralized. So then let's look at the leader then. Well, this is actually known as supportive leadership. And there's no doubt that this is better, but it still isn't ideal. Start by just taking a look at the leader. Well, the leader is the one showing the way, right? They're pointing the direction that they need to go. Well, this assumes that the leader knows best. The leader knows the best way to do things and how to get things done. So let me ask this question to all of you out there. Who knows your job better? You or your boss? And who knows your job better? You or the people who report to you? So from there, I want you to consider the followers. Look at them. They're all the same. There's no diversity, and everyone looks and acts the same, and they're all treated the same. There's little or no encouragement for thinking or acting outside of the box. Now, these people, they can often be decent managers, but remember, you don't get managed out of a crisis. Employees in this type of environment, they tend to actually feel disengaged. There's no excitement about what they do. This is where the "it's not my job" attitude becomes prevalent, and people just concern themselves with what's directly in front of them. Turnover can again be kind of high, and people will leave for same level jobs or for very minor pay increases. Now I want you to take a look at this leadership picture that I call leader. Now, it's also known as intent-based leadership, transformational leadership, or inclusive leadership. And inclusion is an important part of it. Every member of the team must feel like they are accepted and included. To emphasize this, can you tell who the leader is in this group? Not really, not by looking at them. They all know the task to be performed, and they're all working together to achieve it. Now look at the actual people. They're not just in different colors, but had I been able to figure out how to show it, they would have been different sizes and different genders. In the real world, people are not all the same. They have different life experiences, different levels of education, different economic backgrounds, and different skill sets. The more diverse the environment, the more opportunity to improve your team. Now, diversity itself is commonplace in today's work environment. Inclusion goes a step further because it recognizes that people are different, but embraces those differences. People are not just accepted, but appreciated for what makes them different, knowing that a broad spectrum of team members helps to bring more to the team. Inclusion promotes an environment where every member of the team feels valued. They feel welcomed, protected, and respected. Most of all, they would all know that they are important and that they all have an important role on the team. Turnover in this environment tends to be lower. People stay even when they're offered better paying jobs. When people do leave, it tends to be for reasons more intrinsic than just money. They leave for opportunity because an inclusive environment can be a breeding ground for future leaders. So how do we actually get on the road to creating an inclusive environment? Take some advice from Bill and Ted and just be excellent to each other. It's more than just accepting differences, but accepting and appreciating every single member of the team, what makes you the same and what makes you different. Take a look at this as an illustration for this. In diversity-oriented management training, we would be told that when there's a chasm that divides our staff, build bridges. And when you build the bridges, you encourage the people to come out and meet in the middle. Now, building bridges can be very effective, and I will never say that it's not worthwhile. It can solve all kinds of personnel issues, and it can help you find a commonality that can be shared within the group. Building bridges is also significantly faster than going through a full inclusive process. And the inclusive process would be more and more in depth. It would instead encourage people to climb down into the chasm and really get into it about what separates one person from the other. It encourages them to go onto a journey and see and understand what separates them. And in the process, they will leave behind their biases and their misconceptions. And as they approach the base of their differences, they should have a better understanding of the other person. And they will be eventually able to find themselves truly on common ground. It can be similar to building bridges, but the intent behind it is different. By diving into the differences, you hope to build a better understanding, appreciation, and acceptance of those differences, and build a stronger team in the process. It would eventually be like the chasm was never even there. So if that's the goal, how do you actually get there? Well, Catalyst is a global nonprofit organization dedicated to removal of barriers in the workplace and the development of an inclusive environment. They promote the 4 leadership behaviors linked to inclusion, and it's a concept known as EACH. That stands for empowerment, accountability, courage, and humility. Bill Gates said, as we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. I want you to think of it this way. People know how to do their jobs. They know how to do them, right? So work with them to determine what the end result needs to be done. Set the goals and deliverables with them that they need to get to. But let them figure out how to get there. Let them figure out the way to do their work. You just give them the goals to get to at the end. This ties right in with what Eisenhower was saying, how leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants you to do it. Give the person the opportunity to lay down the groundwork of how they're going to do things, and they will want to get that goal done for you. Stephen Covey said that accountability breeds responsibility. The way that this works is that you demonstrate confidence in your direct reports by holding them responsible for performance that they can control. And let me specify that. It's a performance that they can control. If it's something outside of their control, it's not necessarily their fault if they don't meet that deliverable. It's the fault of the person who didn't provide them what they needed to meet the deliverable. So you have to hold them accountable for missed deliverables. I mean, the goals and deliverables were set with them back when you empowered them. They should have informed you when they knew that the deliverables would be missed, and there's no shame in asking for help. Ultimately, if people don't have repercussions for what goes wrong, how can they have pride for what goes right? And we want people to have pride in their work. Also, don't forget that people need to hold you accountable as well. You have your own goals, you have your own repercussions then. This, of course, ties into the first part of what Glashow said, how a leader is willing to take a little more than his share of the blame. And that's essentially what you're doing here. You're asking people to be leaders and take the blame when it is theirs. Winston Churchill said that courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. So courage is what happens when you set personal interests aside to achieve what needs to be done. Now, I want you to really think about that. Take your own personal interests aside. Take a look at what the goals are and what needs to be done for that to happen. That is courage. Have the courage to let others succeed in your group. Even though you're the one who bears the ultimate responsibility, have the courage to let others succeed or fail, even though you have the ultimate responsibility. And most importantly, have the courage to do as Churchill said, and communicate. Courage isn't just about communication, but it certainly takes a lot of courage to communicate effectively within your workforce. Just like Hume said, the art of communication is the language of leadership. And then finally, C.S. Lewis said that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Have you ever known anyone with a big ego? Are they, generally speaking, very open-minded? Are they a good listener? Can they say, I don't know? An inclusive leader knows how to share credit with their team. They'll minimize their influence and share the glory with others. A real leader is willing to say, I don't know. And again, back to Glashow, that a leader is willing to take a little more than his share of the blame and a little less than his share of the credit. I really like Laz's quote in particular because it did hit two of these aspects of each. And I think that in itself is one of the things that makes it such an empowering quote. But those are the four leadership behaviors of inclusion. And these need to be implemented throughout the entire team. This just can't be up at the upper management level. This has to be the entire team embraces these four aspects. So let's see if we can get a real world example in this. Meet Mary. Mary is a technician in your facility, and a large portion of her job consists of changing cages. Mary's just recently become a single mom, and her daughter, Emily, is just about to start kindergarten. Emily's school bus will be only picking her up at 8:20 in the morning. So Mary would like to shift her workday from 7 to 3 instead to be 9 to 5, which is the same as the office staff. She has family members that can take care of Emily until she gets home, but they just aren't available in the morning. Fine. This is Joe. Joe is the lead in cage wash. Just like the rest of the staff in the facility, Joe and his crew work from 7 to 3. And they have a policy that no dirty cages can be left in the cage wash overnight. Mary, unfortunately, will only be bringing in the last of her cages at about 4 o'clock. So what do? Now, I know you guys are all managers. You're probably going through a bunch of potential scenarios in your head of what might work out. But if we were to handle this in an inclusive leader-leader environment, Mary and Joe would be charged with rectifying this whole situation. As their manager, you would empower them to work together to find an equitable solution. You would hold them accountable to meet their previously determined goals and objectives, and each would need to show some courage, not only in the workplace, but in communication, because personal interests will factor in here, and Joe would need to realize just how important this is to Mary. Finally, humility would be required, as it could be that each of them will need to make some type of sacrifice in order to make things work. But all in all, it's part of inclusion and part of protecting the team. This could be a true leadership opportunity for everyone involved, but it has to be encouraged to be seen that way. In my opinion, the most important of the whole concept is empower. The others are important as well, but they can almost happen on their own as a result of empowerment. So how do you empower your employees? Well, a great way to start is with a mission statement. All right, gave you guys a second to read that and for me to grab a drink of water. Now, I want to clarify what a mission statement is here, because there is some confusion sometimes between a mission statement and a vision statement. Another term for a vision statement is a BHAG. That is a big, hairy, audacious goal. This is pie in the sky stuff, and it sets your long-term goals of the organization. Determining your BHAG is a great way to form a vision statement. And this can be done at the very top of your organization. You don't necessarily need everyone involved in this. But a mission statement is a map or a plan on how to get to your BHAG. It should be brief, no more than a few sentences, and you'll speak in ideals, but it will still say what you do now and where it is that you want to go. And that is what a mission statement is. Here's some examples, one from Adidas. We strive to be the global leader in the sporting goods industry with brands built on a passion for sports and a sporting lifestyle. That says where they want to go, and it says how they plan on getting there. Amazon says, we seek to be the Earth's most customer-centric company for 4 primary customer sets: consumers, sellers, enterprisers, and content creators. Well, that's a little bit reminiscent of Ren and Stimpy. No, not Ren and Stimpy. What were they called? Pinky and the Brain. That was it. Pinky and the Brain, with Pinky's plan to take over the world. That's almost what they're going for here, but it still says where they want to go and how they want to get there. Or how about this from Procter & Gamble? Provide branded products and services of superior quality and value that improve the lives of the world's consumers, now and for generations to come. Again, pretty audacious, but it says exactly where people want to be going. So I would encourage all of you, as a team effort in your facility, to build a mission statement. When you build a mission statement in an inclusive environment, everyone is involved. This way, everyone can understand it and they can see the role that they play in fulfilling that mission. When the mission statement is just given to them by management, they lose that sense of inclusion and their commitment levels are not the same. So it needs to include everyone, not just management. That means, yes, the office staff as well. Get the guys in from Cage Wash. They need to be involved as well as your technicians and, of course, the attendants. It needs to have everyone within your facility involved. Yes, you can break it down into smaller sections. Yes, you can have them do it in teams and then bring representatives from each team together. But you still want everyone to see the part that they will play. So how do you actually build a mission statement then? Well, for that, I want to refer to Simon Sinek. Now, Sinek really jumped in popularity about 1.5 years ago when he made a video about understanding millennials, and it went viral online. But for those of us who were following him beforehand, you know him from his TED Talk and his book, Start With Why. In these, Sinek talks about the golden circle. The golden circle is basically the what, how, and why companies do what they do. So every organization on the planet knows what they do. These are the products they sell or the services they provide. Some organizations know how they do it. These are the things that make them special or set them apart from their competition. Few organizations know why they do what they do. Why is not just about making money, and certainly in our field it's not about making money because no one actually seems to make any. Making money is a result. Why is the purpose, the cause, or belief? It's the very reason that your organization exists. Sinek then goes on to discuss Apple computers to illustrate his idea, because Apple is simple and everyone gets it. If Apple did things like everyone else, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, easy to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Yeah, you get the information, but not necessarily inspiring. How Apple actually does things? Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making great products. They're beautifully designed, easy to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? And that's a great approach to a mission statement. Ask the question, why do you do what you do? This is the idea that you want to sell to your team and to your clients. And I sure hope that everyone realizes that the people that use your facility are your clients. You're a service-based industry, and you want people to buy your service. And you want your staff to buy why you do what you do. Sinek says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's why you start with why. Last year, I asked my colleagues at work to go to several of our clients and find out what their institutional mission statements were. And I want to share one with you in particular, because this is from the University of Guelph, and they did use an inclusive process to develop this statement. They literally had buy-in from the entire facility. The statement reads, "It's our desire to provide leadership, service, and support in the field of laboratory animal science through education, diligence, and cooperative involvement, while aspiring to provide the highest standards of animal care and welfare." If you want to build an inclusive environment where people feel empowered, then have them all help to build a mission statement. When they all have a voice in forming that statement and they can all understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, they will all understand how they fit into that picture. They will all understand how they are included in achieving that main goal. And that is empowerment. Another great concept, another great idea on how to improve empowerment and inclusion is the concept of leadership rounding. And I'd love to know if any of you are currently using this type of procedure in your facilities. It was originally developed in the healthcare industry, and it sees middle and upper management circulate through a facility on a regular basis, whatever you can do that's regular, monthly, bi-monthly, whatever. And they ask a series of questions. Some example questions are, what is working well? This provides frontline staff with the chance to talk about how their hard work and commitment are paying off in better outcomes. It gives them a chance to advocate for themselves, and it opens up the possibility to address improvements on past issues. This shows accountability. Is there anyone that I should recognize? This asks people to look at their coworkers in a positive light. It increases the sense of belonging to anyone who happens to receive this praise, because you will go to that person and say, hey, someone mentioned to me that you're doing a fantastic job at whatever. And that's a great way to increase their sense of belonging in the team. Based on their reaction, you could also ask about any concerns or problems. But for the most part, try to go positive first and try to keep things as positive as possible, even when you're delving into problems. Is there anything that you need? This puts them in a position of importance. You are asking them what they need from you, and you're concerned about their needs. It also reinforces that there is a goal to be achieved. And it gives them a chance for things that they might be doing without, even though there's no problem with asking. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone into facilities and seen people sweeping floors with a broom with 6 bristles on it because no one ever asked for a new broom. So ask them if there's anything they need. Is there anything that we could do better? Now, we could mean management, the department, the team, or you. Now, they might actually be shocked when you ask them that the first time, but again, it will increase their sense of belonging if you ask them for feedback on you. And it shows humility on your part, which again is very empowering to your staff. Is there anything that would be good for me to know? By asking this question, you let your front line know that you're genuinely interested in their thoughts, and you finish the rounding on a positive note. This really encourages courage and empowerment in the workplace. So leadership rounding, a simple thing that you can do on a regular basis, just 5 or 6 questions, put them together as you see appropriate, and try doing this on a regular basis. So at this point, I think we all realize that leader is the way to go. Inclusion plays a big role in it. Each is a solid, reasonable approach to building an inclusive environment. How crafting a mission statement as a group activity will help to develop empowerment, and leadership rounding on a regular basis will promote an informed and inclusive environment. So it's all good, right? It should be all smooth sailing from here on out. Maybe not. Resistance can come from any direction. It can come from your boss who doesn't trust the people in the down chain to properly run things on their own. It can come from the side, from a coworker on the same level as you who doesn't want you to implement any changes because then maybe they need to change. Or it could and likely will come from below. Now, no matter where it comes from, you need to determine why there's resistance and identify the root causes. Is it because of ego? Does someone have a sense of ownership and you're taking that away from them? Is it jealousy and people don't want to see you succeed ahead of them? Or are they trust issues? Is it just plain micromanaging? Now, regardless, we won't be talking about managing up or sideways today, because either one of those could be an entire seminar on their own. But let's talk about some of the more common reasons for resistance from below. Sometimes people are just complacent. They will insist that they've always done things this way, and this way is just fine. So rather than forcing them to change, just do the same thing as you would do for this puppy here. Hey boy, want to play ball? Just get them to play ball. Let them know that it's fine if they want to keep on doing things the way that they already do. The only thing that's going to change is that they will be responsible now for making sure that it's done. Do things the way that you always did, but you're also taking the responsibility to ensure that it's done. It's a small change, but you're letting them know that by them taking the responsibility of getting things done, that they are also accepting the responsibility of the job itself. They'll have the freedom to do things as they always have, or the freedom to change, and it's their choice to do so. It can be slow, but chances are if you just do little things like that with them all the time and get them to play ball, their energy levels will build up, and they will start to get a little bit more involved. Complacency just needs small steps. What about entitlement? Well, yes, I need to tell you first of all that this is my cat, Oliver. and we're looking for an image of something to show entitlement. Can you get any better than an orange tabby who's swatting at something just because he wants it? Yeah, that's pretty entitled. But I'm talking about the real sense of entitlement here, not the entitlement that people think millennials have, because that's, again, another webinar, and I'll go on for days, how millennials are not entitled. The entitlement that I'm talking about here are from people who think that they are better and more important than the people around them, and as a result, they're willing to sacrifice other people. I'm talking about people who have double standards. They'll get all upset if someone else in the team calls in sick or doesn't show up, but they think it's fine when they don't do it. And I'm talking about people who are manipulative. They're rude to people that they think are below them, and things get hostile when they don't go their way. Those are the types of entitled people I'm talking about. In this case, stick to your plan. Include everyone of your team, including them. Keep them as a team member and reinforce to them that they are a team member. Don't forget the concept of each and concentrate on E and A. That's the empowerment and accountability. This will help them to feel more important and will make them accountable. Now, if you're thinking that the last thing an entitled person needs is an increased sense of importance, that's not really true. And that's where you need to kind of feel sorry for them. Ultimately, entitled people often feel inadequate, and it's a sense of being better or more important. It's actually an affectation that they put on to boost their ego. So work with them to establish reasonable goals that they can achieve, and their sense of inadequacy should diminish. And then the third main reason that you may hit resistance is because of learned helplessness. Now, I want to go just a little bit deeper with this concept because I think it's something that we've all seen, and the original understanding of it came directly from our field. Back in the 1960s, Martin Seligman was doing experiments on classical conditioning, and he had 3 groups of dogs. A dog from each set was put into a harness. At random intervals, a bell would be rung, and then a few seconds later, well, for the group 1 dogs, nothing would happen. For the group 2 dogs, they would get a mild shock that could be stopped by moving a lever. It would usually take them about 10 shocks to realize this relationship, and they would then move the lever as soon as the bell rang. Group 3 dogs would get a shock, but their lever did nothing. The shock would continue through its cycle, and the dogs would just take the shock and whimper. Realizing that there was nothing that they could do, they would simply give up, and their behavior would actually start as soon as the bell was rung. This is learned helplessness. Now, I want to reinforce here, just to set everyone's mind at ease, the shock was mild. It was enough to cause mild discomfort. Even still, I don't know if this study would get approved today, but it is something we need to be aware of. An employee that's been under an authoritative leader for a long period of time will likely have that same type of learned helplessness. They feel like there's no point in even trying because I tried it once before. I tried it a dozen times before, and nothing ever changed. A lot of us will even recognize that type of defeatist attitude when we were back in school. You know, you'd study for that big math test, but you just can't seem to get it. The next time that test comes around, you start talking yourself into a mindset that no matter what you do, you're never going to get it. Now, again, it's doubtful that Seligman's experiment would be approved today, but let's assume that it were, and it was taking place at your facility. And at your facility, you participated in a rehousing program. Well, what would you do then with these group 3 dogs? Would you leave them in that condition of learned helplessness? Or would you, potentially with their new owners, work with them? Would you train them? Would you help these dogs learn how to handle potentially awkward situations? And would you help these dogs to become the best dog that they could be? Well, I would like to think that that's something that we would all do if this was a study at our facility. So if we're willing to do that with our dogs, then why wouldn't we do the same thing with an employee? Embrace the inclusive mindset and work with them. As much as possible, retrain them and help them find a mentor and help them realize that their actions can have positive consequences. This is not learned helplessness here, but rather learned optimism. Again, it will be slow, arduous process, but why not help them to be the best employee and team member that they can be? That's how you build an inclusive environment, by embracing even the resistance. Ultimately, I want you all to think of it this way. Imagine that your team is a box of crayons, but not an ideal box of crayons like this one. Instead, they're a box of crayons like this one. They're all different lengths, different colors, different hardnesses, different ages. Some are new and unproven, others are older and worn down, and yeah, some are broken. But ultimately, you're all there for the same purpose. You are all there to draw the picture that you have set out in your mission statement, and you all belong in that box. Why not take your colors out of the box and see what kind of beautiful picture you can make together? And that's the way that you all achieve your goals, build a leader environment, and truly become an inclusive leader.
All right.
So I'm going to make,
I guess
I'm going to make my, I'm just going to make my webcam live now so people can actually see me, because I believe we're going to get into some Q&A now.
Yeah, you're good. I've got you. I can see you very plainly. So anyway, so what we'll do now, and it's a good picture too. It's not a bad picture.
Very plainly. Okay.
Anyway, so as I said earlier, you have a questions box. You can jump in there, send your questions. Pam is back online. Pam is going to read out the questions that you give or send in for Gordon, and so we'll just wait just a minute and let you get started with that. Go ahead, Gordon. Sorry.
Maybe what we could do is, while people are getting their questions up, I do actually have some resources that I wanted to put up as well. How about if I take 2 minutes and do that?
Yeah, that's fine. That'll be good.
All right. Let's bring that back up here. I'll turn off my camera. All right. So I thought that you would all enjoy taking a little look at the library that I used to put this presentation together. Again, this is stuff that I've been following for years, so I find it really quite intriguing. I'm a huge fan of TED Talks. I think that TED Talks are a great way to get, again, those little snippets of information. So I would really recommend that everyone watch Derek Sivers' How to Start a Movement, and 2 talks from Simon Sinek, Start with Why, that I already mentioned, and Why Good Leaders Make You Feel Safe, where he talks all about how a good leader creates a protective environment. Drew Dudley's TED Talk on everyday leadership is absolutely outstanding. It points out the little opportunities that people have on a daily basis to show true leadership. And Itay Taudam's TED Talk on Lead Like the Great Conductors, this one is a little bit longer, but it's absolutely fantastic. It's totally engaging. He talks about great conductors' leadership styles, and with real-world examples, it's truly engaging. For books, again, I can't say enough about this fellow, Simon Sinek. Start with Why and Leaders Eat Last, 2 books that every leader should really know. For a real-world example of how the inclusive leadership environment can work, David Marquette's book, Turn the Ship Around. He calls it Leading with Intent. He was a submarine commander and tells a great story, not only of how things changed on his boat, but how they changed for the entire Navy with his leadership style. Robert Slater's book, Jack Welch and the GE Way. Now, Jack Welch didn't implicitly embrace inclusion, but he did rewrite a lot of today's management philosophies, and of course developed lean processing, or at least he claims to. But it did lay the groundwork for today's inclusive environment at GE. So it's something that will really help to give some perspective. It's a little bit of a cumbersome read at times, but still tremendously informative. I mentioned Martin Seligman before with his Learned Helplessness. Well, he has a great book out called Learned Optimism, and he talks about how to change these mindsets that people have. Really a great tool for anyone in any type of leadership role. For people who don't have time to read books, then I really recommend this audiobook by Michael Roberto called Transformational Leadership. Now, Michael Roberto is a former faculty member at Harvard Business School, and he's currently the trustee professor of management at Bryant University in Rhode Island. Listening to this book would be the equivalent of auditing his lectures for an entire semester. So it's a great tool right here. And speaking of courses, edX is a massive online course provider. They were originally created by MIT and Harvard, and they host online university-level courses in a wide range of disciplines to a worldwide student body. Most courses are self-paced, and many of the courses are available at no charge, and a lot of them are from leading universities in the world. He taught that there is a certificate available here on inclusive leadership. It features 3 courses in particular: becoming a successful leader, get beyond work-life balance, and leading with effective communication. You can actually audit these courses for free or get a guaranteed, a verified certificate for less than $150. So people who want to go a little bit more in depth, this is definitely something they should look at. And those are my references. So if people actually have any questions now, we can go ahead and dive into those.
Yeah, we do have a few questions. Okay, go ahead, Pam. You take it.
Yeah, okay. So the first question that came through is there a website we can take a look at your slides? And as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, the slides and this presentation will be made available to folks.
That's right. And I'm also, I'm still working on it too, but I will actually have a full handout available as well that I can, Pam, I'll pass it off to you and John, and I guess you guys will get them up on the respective websites. But it will be something more akin to an article that people can refer to that will have a lot of this information on there as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is, without getting political, in your travels, do you see differences about leaders in different countries or geographical areas?
The interesting thing about that is that it's hard to avoid politics with this. And I'll be honest with you, I took the word inclusion out a lot from this whole presentation because of the political aspects of it. But the funny thing is that politics aside, people still seem to embrace the same leadership style. No matter where you fall in the political spectrum, if you take the terminology out, the concept behind them are still the same. So no, I actually tend to feel that leaders are leaders, and that the more that you analyze any type of leadership style, the further into it you get, the more you're going to see falls in line with this leader style. And it almost always does include that inclusive aspect to it.
Great. So the next question we have here is, do you have recommendations for staff where their director is autocratic, coercive, and dictatorial, and where we would prefer a leader?
You know, I wasn't kidding when I said that we could have an entire webinar on managing up, and that is a real challenge. I would say to this person, take a look at the book that I recommended from, what was his name? David Marquette. This is it. Let me see if I can bring that up again. Oh, I can't. Anyhow. Oh, I'm causing all kinds of problems now. Okay, David Marquette's book, Turn the Ship Around. Because when he started to do this, to implement his changes, he was on a submarine out at sea. And he quickly realized that the way that they were doing things was actually against Navy regulation. So they went through a process of changing the regulations, but to a degree, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. So if your leader is so autocratic, is so involved that they are maintaining control over everything, it can be very challenging. But if they are more separated and just want things to continue their own way, but they're not necessarily getting involved with their day-to-day, you can kind of go ahead and kind of sneak some of those changes in there. But unfortunately, like I say, that's a huge other issue. And whoever that person is, go ahead, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to share with you some of the information that I have learned about managing up. But again, I am just starting to understand this topic myself.
Maybe that's the next webinar.
There you go. So the next question we have is, how do you deal with a boss that is not a leader, and how can we try to change her way of leadership when HR supports her in every way?
It sounds to me that in this case, the boss is not only a leader, but probably more of an authoritarian, similar to the previous one, which again is going to be the same type of answer. If, however, I do know of instances where the director of the facility is just very disengaged. They are off doing other things all the time. If you're fortunate enough that this is the case here, where that person is kind of just leaving you alone to do whatever, great. Do whatever. Make the changes that you want to make. If you want to get some level of buy-in from them, just try to make those relations. I would say to go into the whole thing that I was talking about before about rather than building bridges, diving into the divide, try to see if you can build a relationship with this person and try to understand where it is that they might be coming from so you can appropriately address their concerns. if it's ultimately that they just don't trust people, that's something they really need to work on then, and there's only so much that you can do for that.
Okay, great. So the next question we have, and this looks like a doozy, sounds like a couple of questions in one. How do we eliminate the resistance from below when targeting the cause of the resistance doesn't work? Each, in quotes, and positive reinforcement don't seem to work. What if an employee doesn't have the competencies or the proficiencies necessary to fulfill his or her responsibilities? Would you concede that sometimes termination is the right answer?
I'm going to point this person over to the second book by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last, and he talks about an executive in there who made a commitment to their employees that they would never fire someone for performance issues. The exact example that he gives is that if your kid comes home with a failing grade from school, would you fire them? No, of course not. You'd get them tutoring, you'd work with them, you'd try to encourage them. So I really like that type of mentality, and I think it sets an ideal for us to reach to, that no, you should be trying to retrain this person and trying to get them to develop to be more. But by the same right, you have to hold them accountable to a certain outcome. If they are not willing to meet that outcome, if they're not willing to meet those objectives, then it has to be on them to decide to leave. If you try to get rid of them, and of course there are situations, I do really believe that, where termination is the only choice, but when we're talking for non-performance here, I'm a big fan of trying to coach people, build them up, find out what's going on, why they aren't performing, and to try to address things in that route. I'm not going to say that that's the only potential solution here, but it would probably be the ideal one. So please, whoever you are, check out that book, Leaders Eat Last, and I think you might get some insight from there.
Okay, and there's another question here. How does a leader handle the bad apple, i.e., no matter what you do, there is someone who only complains but does not engage by making suggestions or recommendations?
That's a tough situation. You know, I love talking about ideals when we discuss management, and of course you think, well, if you do this, then that should happen. But then my wife comes home from her job and she tells me about things going on in her environment, and I hear these things that just make me want to pull my hair out even more. And this sounds like it's one of those types of situations. You're trying to do what you can for the person, but ultimately they just don't want to participate. Maybe it's because they're complacent. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe they're planning on retiring next year and they just don't want to be bothered. I would still try to do the baby steps with them and just say, fine, but we're just making you responsible for this one little thing. This is part of your job, right? So tell me that you would realize that you need to get this done, and get them to accept it in that small little way and try to build on it from there. Ultimately, though, with a lot of people like this, they tend to have a lot more going on in their life than what is being reflected in the workplace. So maybe you even want to consider getting HR in there and discussing with them what else is going on in your life that is causing your work to be this way. Ultimately, though, it does come down to accountability. If people are not meeting their objectives in the workplace, you need to hold them accountable for it. They need to hold themselves accountable for it. And if termination is the only way to go, they've put themselves into that position. It's not something that you've done.
Great. So we're at our 1 hour time mark, and I just want to remind everybody to please complete the survey at the end of the presentation and give your honest feedback so we know what direction we're going in the future for future webinars.
And I would also encourage people that you have my contact information here on the screen. If anyone has any other questions or comments to make, please go ahead and send them out to me. I'll do my best to at least point you in the right direction, and we'll see what we can all learn from there.
Yeah, and I would like to break in and just say that just give everybody the message that this presentation will be available through Llama and through Lottie. So I'm not sure how Lottie is going to present it, but I'm not sure how Llama will present it on their website for their members, but Lottie will have it posted to the shared webinar section in our website. Do you want to share anything about that, Pam? And how it will be offered to the Llama members?
Yeah, I'll have to get back to the audience that's on this session on how we'll deliver this.
Okay, so I knew we didn't have it completely squared away, and that's okay. But at some point, it will be available to all who attended and anyone who's a member on the Lottie side anyway. I'm not sure how it will work on the Llama side. So, but with that, I did want to say I really appreciate Pam and Gordon doing so much to make this happen. And Gordon, I really it was great pictures, man, on the presentation. So you don't
Thank
usually
you.
get such good pictures when you have these. So anyway, I thought it was really good, really informative, and I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you very much, John.
Okay. Well, and
Thank you
Pam,
all.
we'll close it out if y'all don't have anything else, and we'll talk through email soon.
Yes.
All right, sounds good.
And I got some
Great
thank
week.
yous. Some thank yous are popping up in the question box. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon. Y'all have a good day.
All right, thank you very much, everyone.